Hello, everyone. Today we continue our lesson with another very important electronic component. It is the transistor. In the previous lessons, we learned about semiconductors and about the diode. And now, remember this. From the semiconductor, engineers created the transistor. So, what is the structure of a transistor? And how does it work? Let's explore it together. 1. The structure of a transistor. A transistor is made from 3 semiconductor layers joined together, forming 2 PN junctions. If the order is PNP, we call it a PNP transistor. If the order is NPN, we call it an NPN transistor. To make it simple, you can imagine that a transistor is almost like 2 diodes connected in opposite directions. These 3 semiconductor layers are connected to form 3 terminals. The middle layer is called the base, symbol B. This layer is very thin and lightly doped. The outer layers form the other 2 terminals, plus the emitter, symbol E, and the collector, symbol C. Although the emitter and the collector are made from the same type of semiconductor, both N-type or both P-type, their sizes and their doping levels are different. That is why the emitter and collector cannot be swapped. The operating principle of a transistor. In fact, the way a transistor works is very similar to a switch. But here it is an electronic switch. It can turn on and off at very high speed, at high frequency, and most importantly, it can be controlled. Let's look at the NPN transistor. First, we apply a DC-DC voltage UCE between the collector and the emitter. The positive terminal plus goes to the collector. The negative terminal ons goes to the emitter. Next, we apply another DC voltage UBE through a switch and a resistor between the base and the emitter. The positive terminal plus goes to the base. The negative terminal, minus, goes to the emitter. When the switch is open, even though we already applied voltage to C and E, no current flows. At this time, the current IC equals 0. When the switch is closed, the PN junction is forward biased. A current flows from the positive of UBE through the switch, through the resistor, through the BE junction, back to the negative terminal. This current is called IB. The moment IB appears, immediately another current IC flows through the CE junction. This current lights up the lamp, and importantly, IC is much stronger than IB. That means the current IC depends directly on IB according to the formula IC equals B dot as IB, where IC is the current through the CE junction, IB is the current through the BE junction. Babao is the current gain of the transistor. Let's explain it simply. When we apply UCE alone, electrons and holes cannot cross the PN junction. But when IB appears, because the base layer is very thin and lightly doped, many electrons from the emitter N-type cross over into the base P-type. A small number of these electrons combine with holes to form the base current IB. But most electrons are pulled toward the collector thanks to the voltage UCE. This creates the collector current IC through the transistor. The PNP transistor. The operation of the PNP transistor is almost the same as the NPN transistor. The only difference is the polarity of the voltages UCE and UBE is reversed. The collector current IC flows from emitter to collector, and the base current IB flows from emitter to base. Symbols and appearance of transistors. Today, in the market, there are many kinds of transistors produced by different countries, but the most common ones come from Japan, the United States, and China. Japanese transistors, they are usually labeled with the letters A, B, C, or D. For example, a 564, B733, C828, or D1555. Among them, plus A and B are PNP transistors. C and D are NPN transistors. Also note, plus transistors with A and C usually have low power, but they can operate at high frequency. Transistors with B and D usually have higher power, but operate at lower frequency. American transistors, they're usually labeled starting with 2N. For example, 2N3055 or 2N4073. Chinese transistors, they usually begin with the number 3, followed by 2 letters. The first letter shows the type. A and B mean PNP transistors. C and D mean NPN transistors. The second letter shows the characteristics. X and P mean low-frequency transistors. A and G mean high-frequency transistors. The numbers that follow indicate the serial number of the product. For example, 3CP25 or 3AP20. How to identify the E and C pins of a transistor. For small power transistors, the order of the collector C and the base B pins may vary depending on the country of manufacture. But one thing is almost always the same. The emitter E pin is on the left side when we place the transistor in the standard position. For Japanese transistors, for example, C828 or A564, here the collector is in the middle and the base is on the right. For Chinese transistors, the base is in the middle and the collector is on the right. For SMD transistors, usually the collector is still in the middle, but the base pin may change position depending on the manufacturer. In reality, the most accurate way to identify the pins is to use a multimeter, because some fake or low-quality transistors may not follow this order at all. For large power transistors, the arrangement is almost always fixed. On the left is the base, B, in the middle is the collector, C, and on the right is the emitter, E. Measuring to identify the base and collector pins. For small power transistors, the emitter E is usually on the left side, so what we really need to do is identify the base B pin. Then the collector C will simply be the remaining pin. Here's the method. Set the multimeter to the times 1 ohm range. Fix one probe on any pin. Touch the other probe to the two remaining pins, one by one. If the needle moves up the same amount in both cases, then the pin with the fixed probe is the base. Once we know the base pin, we can also identify the transistor type. If the fixed probe is the black probe, then the transistor is NPN. If the fixed probe is the red probe, then the transistor is PNP. Method of testing a transistor during operation. A transistor may fail for several reasons. It may fail due to high temperature, due to humidity, due to a sudden increase of supply voltage, or simply because of poor component quality. To test a transistor, we need to recall its internal structure. For an NPN transistor, you can think of it as two diodes with a common anode, and that common point is the base pin. When we measure from base to collector and from base to emitter, with the black probe on the base, the needle should move up, just like when measuring two forward bias diodes. In all other cases, the needle should not move. For a PNP transistor, it is similar to two diodes with a common cathode, and the common point is again the base pin. When we measure from base to collector and from base to emitter, with the red probe on the base, the needle should move up. Again, just like two forward bias diodes. In all other cases, the needle should not move, if the results or transistor is faulty. Common faulty cases include if measuring forward from base to emitter or base to collector and the needle does not move, the transistor is open BE or open BC. If measuring from base to emitter or base to collector and the needle moves in both directions, the transistor has a short or leakage between BE or BC. If measuring between collector and emitter and the needle moves, then the transistor has a short CE. Biasing a transistor. First, we need to understand the basic technical parameters of a transistor. Maximum current. This is the current limit of the transistor. If the current goes beyond this limit, the transistor will be damaged. Maximum voltage. This is the voltage limit applied to the collector-emitter terminals. If the voltage goes beyond this value, the transistor will be broken down. Cutoff frequency. This is the maximum frequency at which the transistor can operate normally. If the frequency is higher than this limit, the gain of the transistor decreases. Current gain. This is the ratio between the collector current IC and the base current IBE. In simple words, it shows how many times larger the collector current is compared to the base current. Maximum power dissipation. When in operation, the transistor dissipates power according to the formula P equals UCEE multiplied by ICE. If this power goes beyond the maximum rating, the transistor will be damaged. Some special types of transistors. Digital transistor. A digital transistor has almost the same structure as a normal transistor. However, at the base pin, the manufacturer has already added a built-in resistor, usually a few tens of kilo ohms. This type of transistor is commonly used in switching circuits, logic circuits, and control circuits. When in operation, we can directly apply a 5-volt control signal to the base pin to turn the load on or off, just like an electronic switch. In fact, some automotive ECUs also use this type of digital transistor. Markings of digital transistors. Digital transistors are usually marked as follows: DTA PNP type, DTC NPN type, KRC NPN type, KRA PNP type, RN12 NPN type, and 22 PNP type, and also other series such as UN, KSR, examples DTA 132, DTC 124, and so on. Power transistors, current type. Power transistors with large capacity are often called SO in Vietnamese, which means big power devices. There are different types, such as current SO or supply SO. These transistors are specially designed to control high voltage circuits or to drive switching transformers in power supplies. They usually operate at high voltages and they can withstand very large currents. In some applications, like in color televisions, these current type power transistors are often built with internal protection diodes connected in parallel with the collector and emitter terminals. For this type of power transistor, when we measure between the collector and the emitter, it behaves like a diode. Powering the transistor, VCC, supply voltage. To use a transistor in a circuit, we need to provide it with a power supply. Depending on the purpose, the supply can be connected directly to the transistor, or it may go through a resistor, a coil, and so on. The supply voltage VCC for a transistor is conventionally defined as the voltage provided to the collector-emitter path. We can see that if the transistor is of type NPN, then VCC must be a positive source. If the transistor is of type PNP, then VCC must be a negative source. Biasing a transistor. Biasing means providing a voltage to the base pin through a bias resistor so that the transistor is placed into a ready state, ready to amplify even very small signals. Why do we need to bias a transistor before it can operate properly? To understand this, let's consider two circuit diagrams. In the first circuit, the base pin is not biased. In the second circuit, the base pin is biased through a resistor, RB. Input signals that are fed into an amplifier are usually very small, with an amplitude from about 0.05 volts to 0.5 volts. If we apply these small signals to the base of a transistor without biasing, they are not strong enough to create a base emitter current, IBE. This is because a PN junction needs about 0.6 volts before current can flow. As a result, there is no collector emitter current, ICEs. The voltage drop across the load resistor, RG, is 0 volts, and the output voltage at the collector remains equal to VCC. Now let's look at the second circuit, where the transistor is biased with RB. In this case, there's already a small base emitter current, IBE. When a small signal is applied to the base, it makes the current IBE either increase or decrease. This change causes the collector emitter current, ICE, to also increase or decrease. The voltage drop across the load resistor, RG, also changes accordingly. As a result, the output signal we obtain is similar to the input signal, but with a much larger amplitude. Conclusion: biasing, or setting the operating point of the transistor, means creating an initial base emitter current, IBE, and an initial voltage drop across the load resistor, RG. That way, when a weak signal is applied to the base, IB will vary up or down, ICE will also vary up or down, and the change in voltage across RG is exactly the amplified signal we want to take out. Now, let's look at some different types of transistor biasing circuits. By understanding them, we can apply more knowledge into real situations. First, biasing with two separate power supplies. That means one supply provides voltage to the collector, the other supply provides voltage to the base, or sometimes to the emitter. The purpose is to adjust the bias voltage and bias current more precisely, and to keep the amplifier circuit separated from the control circuit. For example, when you build a dummy load simulator for an ECU test, the signals coming from the ECU act as one source, and the power supply for the transistors inside the dummy load is another separate source. Second, biasing with a voltage divider resistor. To handle many kinds of input signals, whether weak or strong, the biasing circuit often uses a voltage divider resistor, RPA, connected from the base down to ground. Third, biasing with feedback. In this circuit, a resistor is connected from the output, which is the collector, back to the input, which is the base. The purpose of this feedback biasing is to increase the stability of the amplifier circuit during operation. So in this lesson, we have explored the transistor, one of the most important building blocks in electronics. Now you know its structure, its working principle, and the basic conditions for operation, whether it is NPN or PNP. Transistors are everywhere. Without them, there would be no true electronic device. In fact, every IC, every integrated circuit, is nothing more than thousands of tiny transistors working together inside one chip. Transistors can amplify analog signals. They can switch digital circuits. They can act as electronic switches or generate oscillations for timing and control. In ECU repair, understanding the transistor deeply gives you the power to create your own tools. You can build a sensor signal simulator, a dummy load for fuel injectors, an ignition coil tester, or even simulated sensors for testing. All of this without having to spend big money on expensive commercial tools. I hope this video has brought you useful and practical knowledge. If you are new here, please remember to subscribe and follow along so you can keep learning more in the upcoming lessons. Thank you for watching, goodbye, and see you in the next video.